this one is from Isaiah. It's a very interesting book, by the way. Isaiah is prophesying. And this one, again, is taken by Christians to be a reference or a prophecy and a typology of Jesus. So a typology because perhaps the immediate reference is to King Hezekiah, right? It's probably describing King Hezekiah, but there's something under the surface foreshadowing someone else to come, possibly. So this is what it says. It says, Ki yeled yulad lanu in the Hebrew. It says, for a child will be born to us. And this verb yulad is actually a pu'al, perfect. It's fi'l madi. It's in the past tense, but it's translated as future because according to Williams in his Hebrew grammar, he says oftentimes in the Old Testament, God will use a past tense verb to emphasize something to come in the future. This is called the prophetic past. For example, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. We find this in the Quran. إِنَّا أَعْطَيْنَاكَ الْكَوْثَرَ. أَعْطَيْنَا, past tense. We will give you Kawthar, or we have already given you Kawthar. So it says, a child will be born, and then it says, Bain nitan lanu. A son will be given. Vathiha misra al-shikhmo. And there will be some sort of symbol of authority upon his shechem, upon his shoulder. Now at this point, Christians have an interesting translation for the rest of this pesuch, or this verse, this ayah, if you will. They take this next verb, vayikra, which means to call, as passive. So their translations are invariably, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, the Eternal Father, the Prince of Peace. That's how they translate it. But if you look at the actual vowel pointings here, vayikra, it is clearly in the active voice. And clearly there's a subject doer and a direct object here. At least this is my contention. So why do Christians tend to translate that way? It's because it says mighty God, right? And Christians, at least Trinitarians, believe that Jesus is essentially God. But there's a problem here. It also calls him Eternal Father, and the Father and the Son are separate and distinct hypostatic entities. So even a Christian reading of the text has some, in my opinion, theological problems from a Christian standpoint. But a better translation in my mind is that taking the verb as active, and the Wonderful Counselor, meaning God, the Mighty God, the Eternal Father, which means the Rabb, Ab means Rabb, shall call his name Prince of Peace, Amirus Salam. Of course, the business of the birthmark or symbol of authority on the prophet's shechem or katif, right? This is mentioned in multiple sources. Bahira, the monk, according to Sirah, knew about this khatam between his shoulder blades. Salman al-Farisi apparently knew about it. There's actually an entire chapter in the Shama'il of Imam al-Tirmidhi, Babu ma ja'a fi khatam an-nubuwwa bayna katifay, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. A whole chapter on this birthmark on his shoulder blade, which is an indication of his authority as a prophet. What's also interesting is that when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam entered into Medina, Abdullah ibn Salam, who was a rabbi at the time, he said that the first thing that the Prophet said, first of all, he said, Araftu anna wajhahu laysa biwajhi kadhab. I recognize, recognize, I recognize his face was not the face of a liar. And then he said that the Prophet said, Ya ayyuhan nas, afshu salama wa at'imu ta'ama wa silu al-arham wa sallu bil-layl wa nasu niyam tadkhulu al-jannata bi-salam. O people, spread peace, share your food, maintain ties of kinship, pray in the night when others are asleep, and you shall enter paradise in peace. So it begins with peace, he ends with peace. That's what rhetoricians will call the inclusio theme of that entire statement. It's about peace, almost as if he's identifying himself as the prophet of peace, or the Sar Shalom, Amirus Salam, the Prince of Peace.